Right. Before we get started, I want to take you to a place called the Cave of Skulls. It's a real place. It exists. I've been there. And I went to this solo cave diving project where I went in my own and I was going to investigate the unexplored underwater passages. But to get there, to get these underwater places, I first had to pass through this tiny crack in the wall of one of the caves. Now, this is actually the entrance to me coming back out. Because as you crawl into it, bearing in mind it's barely big enough for you to fit, as you can tell from that photograph, the water slowly rises. So you crawl in initially, your chin. As you crawl in further, you have to just breathe out the side of your mouth a little bit. And it gets to the point where I had to take my helmet off, so I could press my cheek against the ceiling so I could breathe the last few millimeters of air. But unfortunately, the last 3 or 4 feet is completely submerged. So, one last big breath, brace myself, and push forward. And I got stuck. Today, the theme is losing control, but I would maintain that in certain critical situations, losing control is not an option. And the fundamentals I will speak about today can be applied, I think, to any level of risk in any situation, but I'm going to use to illustrate them really where I use them at the most critical point, the priority 1 dangers that I face, i.e. the ones that, should that risk come to fruition, I will probably die. Now, I've learnt these fundamentals initially at my time in the forces, as was said. I spent 10 years in the forces, travelling the world in operations, as a paratrooper and a diver, but it was as a bomb disposal officer that I really learnt how to deal with threat and danger and risk. And the fact that it is not some sort of big macho thing, it's not about being an adrenaline junkie or being fearless, it's none of that. It's about applying a little bit of thought to the problem. It's treating it as a cerebral challenge more than anything else. It's about taking these things which, yes, may initially be very, very dangerous, but manipulating and controlling the situation enough to remove that danger, so that in the end, there's no longer a need to be afraid. And my current job today is mostly based on this. This is diving, deep sort of technical diving, or cave diving. I do a bit of climbing and also skydiving. And it's great because I do have one of those jobs that was mentioned earlier today, where I get to dress up like a spaceman or a superhero. Or in this case, like a stormtrooper. Because why wouldn't you? And I want to use this last example as a way to illustrate my first point. Skydiving, not dressing up like a stormtrooper. Because what you need to start with is the identification of those risks, those priority 1 risks, those dangers which are most important to you in the project. People often get it wrong, so come with me now in a skydive, okay? We're gonna leap from a plane at 15,000 feet, we're gonna dive out. Within seconds you have accelerated to 120 miles an hour. And the wind is roaring past your helmet. You want to go faster, okay? We'll put our arms behind us, we'll duck down, we'll dive head first towards the ground. Accelerate, 150, 180, 200 miles an hour. Punch through the clouds. There's the earth beneath us, all green and coming at us. And we're still accelerating, 250 miles an hour. At 5,000 feet, Christ, we need to slow down. Put the brakes on, reach back, grab your handle, pull your chute, boom. And your chute blossoms above you beautifully, and the world is silent and peaceful. And you float down towards the earth. It's relaxed, it's lovely, and regardless whether you're religious or not, you thank God you're alive. You're also wrong, because you've just started the dangerous bit. For example, in 2012, there was 3.1 million parachute skydives in the US. Only 19 deaths, and that should already tell you that skydiving, if done correctly, is a relatively safe thing to do. Your chance of dying is like 0.006%, which is far better off than I'm probably going to get driving home tonight. And the majority of those deaths happened under a good canopy. And the problem is the caveman, that's what I call him. The caveman lives in the back of your head, and he is your instinct, and he is your fear. And fear is a good thing. Fear is a tool, fear is helpful. Fear will tell you when you're about to do something dangerous, and it will tell you to either not do that thing or to do something about it. But And he's your friend, you know, he wants to look after you. He doesn't care about your ego or about you earning money or impressing your friends or having a good time. He only cares about keeping you alive. But he is a caveman. He doesn't understand the physics of diving or of skydiving. And therefore he equates what is scary with what is dangerous. And he's often not right. So although under a parachute the world's peaceful and it seems lovely, and doing head first at 250 miles an hour off the ground is incredibly scary, it's actually the parachuting that's dangerous. So, once you've identified these risks, what do you do about them? Well, ideally you can eliminate them, but in reality that's rarely a possibility. One of the few ways to do it is to basically get rid of any superfluous tasks or unnecessary equipment. So, for example, you have a chain, okay? And you want to strengthen that chain. You can strengthen each individual link, and that is great. But also, if you take out any links that aren't necessary, you've again reduced the chances of the chain breaking. But more often than not, that's not possible. So what do you then do? Well, you try and mitigate those risks. You try and reduce them to an extent that you're then happy with what's left. So for example, on my back here is a bit of kit called a rebreather. How it works is irrelevant, but the fact is, if it doesn't work, I will drown, plain and simple. So how do I reduce the risk? Well, in this example, what I can do is I can learn how that piece of equipment works. I can learn to strip it, clean it, and maintain it. So before I go on a diving project, I ensure that that piece of kit is working absolutely perfectly. On the day of the dive itself, again, I'll check it over, do a full diagnostic, and make sure it's working perfectly. And the moment before I roll off the boat or jump into the pool in the cave, again, I'll run a quick check to make sure it's working perfectly. But then I need to decide, have I reduced the risk enough? If I've reduced the risk of that bit of kit failing to like 10 million to 1, I'm happy, job done, move on. If, say, I've only reduced it to, 1,000 to 1, for example, well, if that 1 is me drowning, then those odds I don't think are good enough. But perhaps I can't do any more to reduce the risk, so what do I do then? But then you look at your last option, which is a bailout option. It's your redundancy, it's your plan B. It's that get out of jail free card you've got in your back pocket. In this example, those two sort of silver cylinders slung by my side are my bailout cylinders, and I never use them. But they're there in case the rebreather breaks down. And I will be as paranoid as possible before I start a dive. I will think that everything could possibly go wrong, the worst case scenario, so that when I hit the water, I don't need to be paranoid, I can just relax. So here, if I think there's a chance this piece of equipment will go wrong, I will hit that water assuming it will definitely go wrong at the worst possible time. So you're in a cave, you enter here, you swim for hours, a mile into this cave, turn around and swim back. So I'm going to assume that bit of kit will break down, and it will break down at the worst possible point, i.e. 1 mile from the exit. So I need to ensure I've got enough gas in my bailout cylinders to get me back to safety. And experience counts as well. As we gain experience, we improve. This is me doing a high altitude skydive at about 28,000 feet over the Arizona desert a few years ago, and I was not anywhere near as good a skydiver back then as I am now. And if I was to do this job today, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. But back then, I was beyond stressed. I was way outside my comfort zone. So by gaining experience and exposing yourself to these risks, we build up almost an armour to those risks, but also an appreciation for them, an ability to better plan, better appreciate, and actually be more confident during something like this. And that confidence gives us the mental space to deal with any problems if they occur. And when you're planning your bailout option, that get out of jail free card, make it quick, make it easy. People say to me, oh, it's fine, if anything goes wrong, I can hold my breath for 2 minutes out underwater. So what I'll do is I'll turn this, pull that, twist that, I'll release that over there, that'll come across here, and then I'll be okay. Well, I can hold my breath for over 4 minutes. That's lying half asleep in a swimming pool. I've almost drowned a couple of times, and believe you me, and I consider myself a fairly level-headed guy, but you have 5 to 10 seconds at best, and you are not thinking at your best. When it all goes horribly wrong, what you really, really want is a big red button in the centre of your chest, which you can just punch, that says, take me home. And another example would be with entanglement hazards. When you dive in shipwrecks or maybe in caves that have got lines in them, is a real danger underwater, an inconvenience on land, but if you're underwater, getting tangled up can be fatal. So we carry knives, etc. on us in various places in order to cut ourselves free. And I carry one knife just about here. And people say, well, you know, why? What's the rationale? Well, there's two reasons. One is that it's in the midline of the body, so if I've got a hand that's tangled up, I can always reach it with the other hand. And the other reason is because alone, in the dark, tied up, trapped and panicking, I still know what it is. Because even then, I'll always know where my testicles are. And why take these risks in the first place? You know, why expose ourselves to these potential dangers and have to go through all this process? I'm an explorer at heart, and I hope it's human nature. You want to know what's behind, you know, that door, what's round the next corner, what's over the next hill, what's down the depths, what is out there beyond darkness. And these unknown places are getting further and further and more remote and more extreme in our world. So to get there, we need to face these dangers. But in order to make it back home, which is always my #1 priority, we need to be able to control these dangers, control the situation, and indeed control ourselves. So let's now return to the Cave of Skulls. And I'm there, trapped, chest and back firm against the floor and ceiling of this tiny cavern, completely underwater. I thought to myself, this is not ideal. And I figured out what I'd done wrong. Instinctively, when you're going to make a big effort or put your head underwater, you do this. Which is what I've done. Taking a big, deep breath. So all I did was and breathe out as much as I possibly could. And that collapsed my chest just enough I could squeeze through to safety. Because in these critical situations, we should strive for absolute control, but we need to acknowledge the fact that it's an impossibility. I will make no guarantees. 99% is as close as you can get. And that 1% you can't control, you need to make peace with yourself that it is out with your control. There's no point stressing about that last 1%. It only causes problems when things are going wrong. And in that moment, I find, before I dive in or before I jump out, acknowledge the fact you've done everything you can. There's the small dangers and risks and potentials that you cannot control. And I tend to just drop my shoulders and smile, because if you're going to face the dangers that are out with your control, and face them with a shrug and a smile is about the best advice I can give you. And the entire talk, the whole point of this, because I'm sure there's people that are unconvinced by what I've said so far, can be summarised with one example, with one question. Is crossing the road dangerous? Now, some people say yes, some people say no, maybe, depends. And probably depends is about the closest you get to an accurate answer. Because if you choose to cross that road at night, in the rain, at rush hour, on your hands and knees, wearing black clothing, with your eyes closed, you're going to get hit by a car, I guarantee it. Whereas, if you cross the same road in daylight, nice weather, you'll be wearing bright yellow clothing, who knows, with your eyes open, and you look both ways, you follow the green cross code, and you stay attentive all the way across. You know what? Trust me, you're going to be all right. Because this is the point. It's not the road or the crossing of the road that are in and of themselves dangerous, regardless of what dangers and risks they initially throw up. It's entirely up to yourself. It is the decisions you make, the choices you make, and the actions you take that dictate the level of risk and decide just how much danger you can face.